I remember when I first came on board at Zelda Informer. I mean, there were people that were like, they thought I was the devil incarnate.
And that was the next thing that I was actually going to get to was, since you're already talking about it, when did it become an option for you or a thought to basically just purchase your competitor?
It didn't actually happen. It kind of, here, I'll give you the story. So starting in like 2013 was the first time that the site was doing well enough where I can bring on somebody as sort of like an assistant, like a part-timer to help run the news team, the front page team.
Was that Bastion?
Yeah, that was Bastion. Well, you worked under him.
Yeah.
And that allowed me personally to be more hands-off with the front page.
What was that, Daniel?
Is this the buff Bastion?
Yes, the very muscular Bastion.
He scares me. He's such a happy guy, but then just I look at him, I'm like, ah.
No, this it's kind of a funny story. There was a few people that was in on the joke. I don't think Mossy's was, but whenever he came on, whenever we would talk in like a Skype call, it was just me and Bastion or some of the other people from the community. I would always talk in an accent, like from England or Ireland or somewhere. So every time he talked to me, he's like, "You sound a little bit different than usual." And then finally I started talking with my normal accent. And he was like, "Wait, who is that?" And then, yeah, so that was just like
You've been trolling this guy for like how long?
No, that was only for like a week or two.
Okay, so, that's not bad though. Right, I've never met him, but he seems like a nice guy. But just his physique intimidates the crap out of me.
Yeah, he could be he's a good guy though. He's a really nice guy. I've met him on a few occasions.
Yeah. So continue what you were saying, Mossy.
So he became basically editor-in-chief of the website. He handled all the front page stuff, and it allowed me to focus primarily on the content side of things, the guides, and other features and such.
Do you remember? Because for a short while, you put myself and someone else, I want to say his name was Connor, in charge of the front page to like kind of schedule everything and make sure the site was on time and people were doing what they were supposed to. Do you remember who the other person was? Because I want to say his name was
Davey?
Connor.
Was it Davey?
I don't know. I want to say
he might have been after.
It started with the C, but it was him and I always said
there was a Connor. I know that.
There was one time when you told me that like my writing wasn't bad, it wasn't good, it was just mediocre. So I always thought the reason that you had me like with the high rank or whatever you want to call it that I had wasn't because I was a good writer, it was just because it was reliable. That I would constantly have posts and stuff. So it was me and him for I would say a few weeks, and then you brought in Bastion to kind of be in charge of us. And that was also around the first time that you started doing the Zelda marathon, I think.
Bastion, so funny story. Bastion actually came over with Cody. Actually, they were like a pair. Cody went over. That's how I met Bastion. Actually, Cody went over to do the Pokemon dungeon, and Bastion was helping out at Zelda. And there was another person that was gonna come along, but it didn't work out. So Cody actually introduced me to Bastion, and that's how he ended up becoming the editor-in-chief. But that became like the new standard thing at Zelda Dungeon from that point forward, where I always had like somebody handling the front page. Because, I mean, this has been one of my flaws as a guy running a website is I was always more of a like archived content kind of person, like preserving old content, scanning stuff, writing game guides, stuff like that. It was never a big thing for me to be like a news person. I never had a passion about that. So, especially when websites like the Hylia and then eventually Zelda Informer sort of like ran with that as that's the reason why they exist. It changed the community a little bit, and it changed Zelda Dungeon. I'm like, all right, like then people are talking about like, oh, Zelda Dungeon is always behind on news or something. We don't do news. I'm like, and it almost became like our reputation of being slow on news. It's like, all right, well, we got to do news then. And then that became like a focal point. This was like sort of like the site wars that like sort of spawned. So like our site changed a lot, I'd say in 2011, 12, 13, where it transitioned from more of a archive guide stuff to more news. So I brought on Bastion, and he was like editor-in-chief for about a year or so at the website. And he left. Then I think one of the other writers, Davey, took over. I don't know if you remember him, but he was just a volunteer, and he wasn't as, I guess, like he sort of lost interest, and that happens with volunteers all the time, and you can't blame them. And then I eventually hired a new editor-in-chief, a woman named Kira. She was she wrote for Nintendo Everything prior to coming to Zelda Dungeon. And I hired her as like a part-time worker. And she was editor-in-chief for about a year or so. And she was leaving. And then it was at this point where it was like, okay, well, the search came for, I need a new editor-in-chief. I didn't think at the time we had that person internally. So I was looking elsewhere. And I reached out to Darren. I don't know if you guys know Darren.
Yeah, we're friends with Darren. He's been on a few of my videos before.
So this is Darren. Yeah, he's a great guy. I reached out to him. This was like December of 2015. This was about 2 years ago.
What was he writing at that time?
He was writing at Zelda Informer.
Okay.
So he was one of the he was just a volunteer though. So it was like offering him a job. Basically. Did
you just notice that his articles, like he had a lot of articles or posts that he was writing, and they were all good? Is that why you chose him, or?
He was incredibly dedicated to the site. He was a fixture of the site, basically. He'd be posting every single day for like 7 months straight. So he clearly had the dedication, and that's what you need out of an editor. You can't have a person that takes 5 days off, because the site kind of. I mean, you could if you have the backup people, but that's he was one of the many options I had, and I reached out to him. He had an interest, but then word got out. He talked to Nate, who was running the website at the time, and I found out a lot of information about Zelda Informer during this period that I didn't know before. And the biggest one was that the owner of Zelda Informer, I was under the impression that Nate was the owner of Zelda Informer, or like a half and half relationship.
That was always my assumption as well.
Well, they had like like a verbal agreement, or what I understand, but I don't know. That's in the past at this point. But I later found out that the owner of Zelda Informer was looking to get out. He didn't want to run the website anymore. He was looking to sell. And I'm like, oh, well, this escalated quickly. This is just because I asked Darren to be my editor-in-chief. Suddenly, I found out that the site is for sale. So, I thought about it for a while, and I put together a proposal, and then we went through a negotiation phase, and he eventually took my offer on it to purchase the website. And the idea behind purchasing the website was twofold, really. Number one, it had an amazing social media following that Zelda Dungeon just could not touch. We were nowhere close to that. So, like, anytime news broke, anytime there was a great editorial, you toss it up on social media, suddenly 30,000 people see something in the snap of a finger. And that was something I didn't have. I never had. And I valued that a lot. That's what made Zelda Informer so awesome during 2013 and 14 and 15. It had that social media following. And number two, it had a great writing team. They were better. Zelda Informer was better than us in 2013, for years and years. And I felt with people like Rod Lloyd, Darren Haar, and Nate, like they had an excellent writing team. And rather than start from scratch by hiring a new editor-in-chief and who knows what's going to happen, I felt that was a good opportunity. And the biggest one perhaps was it's peace of mind a little bit. A lot of the things that were happening at Zelda Dungeon and Zelda Informer, like, it's what, we were talking earlier about how like Zelda Universe did the 30 years in 30 days.
Yes,
that's like an exclusive feature, and it's cool. It's nice to read. That's just as interesting to read if you're a Zelda Universe fan or a Zelda Dungeon fan, because it's just Zelda content. With Zelda Dungeon was always a games guide website, and when it's mind-boggling that in 2015 or 16 or 17, there's people that are recreating text-based walkthroughs for Link's Awakening. I don't understand why that's a thing, because that's not something where Zelda Dungeon had we don't have the greatest guide in the history of the world, but we've got a pretty solid guide for it. And if you use the Zelda Dungeon guide, you don't need a Zelda Universe guide or an IGN guide or a GameFAQs guide and there's already like 40 guides, but I don't know why guides became such a focal point of other websites, and specifically Zelda Informer, because they were hitting it hard on guides, because they were basically saying, this is what Zelda Dungeon does well, let's try to inch our way and grab some of that. I kind of make the analogy of, it's like a pizza. And each of us, IGN has a slice, Zelda Dungeon has a slice, GameFAQs has a slice. The pizza's not going to get any bigger. So if you're a newcomer, in this case Zelda Informer, that you're starting to do guides, you're not growing the pizza. You're literally just pulling away pieces from the other people that already have pieces, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, it was one of those things, like, especially when it's your livelihood and another website is trying to grab what you have almost, and the idea of purchasing it, and it becomes part of the family, you're eliminating almost like a threat in a sense. And that was the third, I guess, pillar of why I ended up making that proposal and eventually the successful purchase.
All right, and one of the confusing things for me, which I think Daniel and I debated a little bit on the last video, maybe towards the end, was for the average person who doesn't have an allegiance with Zelda Dungeon or any particular website, they just click on whatever the most popular link is. For them to type in, let's say there's a 2D Zelda game coming to the Switch. They type that in on Google, and the first thing that pops up, whether it be Zelda Dungeon, Zelda Informer, Zelda Universe, IGN, Nintendo Everything, Nintendo Life, whatever it may be, I would think it would be easier to get their click if it was Zelda Informer and Zelda Dungeon both having either the same article, like dual posted on both sites, or if it was like one person wrote one article and one person wrote another article. I use the example of, with WWE, they're basically the biggest wrestling company, so with Raw and SmackDown, they create competition with themselves to try to bring up each other's ratings. And I was thinking, well, why don't you do that with Zelda Informer and Zelda Dungeon and basically have like your own competition between each other? That way it would pull views from the other websites, but it also might pull views from a competing website that you aren't a part of. Because if there's 10 articles that has, or 10 websites that have an article about something very specific, I would imagine it would be better to have 2 out of 10 chances instead of just 1 out of 10 to get those views or those clicks and fans. So what's your thought on that?
Well, when it comes to like your analogy about news and breaking news in particular, you got to consider that in the grand scheme of things, Zelda Dungeon is a really small fish in a big pond. Because if they announce a new Zelda game tomorrow, that's going to be on 500 different websites. I'm not just talking, it's going to be on Business Insider or Forbes or something. We'll probably report on it, and then Kotaku and GameSpot and IGN, it's in everywhere is reporting on it. So we're not just like, when it comes to Zelda, we're not competing against Zelda Universe. While we're there, we're competing against everybody, including YouTube now, including Facebook, and everything. And it's almost like, so I'm not sure how much of a market there really is for duplicating the same content on the two sites. It's kind of frivolous, especially when almost all the traffic's going to come from social media. We're gonna shoot that message up on Zelda Informer's Facebook page. Here's the article. Go check it out. And then suddenly 20,000, 30,000 people have looked at it, and like, what are we going to post the same thing on Zelda Dungeon? And it's weird.
Yeah.
I didn't feel the need for that. That's why right when I bought it, I ended all news on Zelda Dungeon. We shifted focus on that, so Zelda Dungeon's like social media started sharing all of Zelda Informer stuff. There was an overlap period for about a year where we were still doing like editorial work on Zelda Dungeon, just like features that were just not in news or time sensitive, just like sort of like top 10s and stuff like that. And we kept that up for a short while. There was a lot of uncertainty in most of 2016 with what we were doing, because I had to sort of like tread lightly a little bit, because it was a lot more difficult than I anticipated, because there was a lot of backlash towards me being involved with the site with some of the legacy staff members. But then there was a lot of people on the Zelda Dungeon side that, like, I'm like, some of our best writers, I'm like, yeah, we're shifting news over to Zelda Informer. I don't want to go there. I'm like, why? Why not? You're doing the same thing you've always done. But it was like, is so-and-so there? Yeah, he's there. Well, I'm not going there then. like stuff that happened on a forum 6 years ago, that person doesn't like that person. So there was some of that. And so, I mean, that's why we went with two different sites for a long while. And my intention was to keep it that way forever, actually. 2016 was not a good year, I'd say, for the sites. And I learned a lot in that first year, and we adjusted accordingly, I'd say, in 2017.
All right, and how did the process come along? Because what originally started the video last week, we weren't even going to do it, and then whenever we first did the call, Daniel said that he clicked on a Zelda Informer article and it took him to Zelda Dungeon. But whenever I went and did it, it didn't redirect me to Zelda Dungeon or anything. So we started talking about that, and it was like, well, it might be good to talk about it for the people that are subscribed to us that have an interest in the two websites.
Yeah, and there's likely an overlap of those two, because I mean, for me personally, a lot of my favorite like Zelda YouTubers I discovered through these websites, right? And the article in question was I guess it was the public news announcement from Andy. I think that was the article we were referencing in that video. But yeah, I figured that like our fan base, there's probably a lot of fans who also frequent these sites, and so it was relevant news to them. It's like more of a community piece.
Yeah. So the plan is to over time merge the two websites, so it's just Zelda Dungeon, or what exactly is the plan going forward?
Well, it's been a gradual plan for about 6 months now, where when we made the decision, I made it with Darren, and I talked. This was when he was still editor-in-chief, back in late spring, I think, maybe it was early, whatever it was. And we're like, let's do this, and we were planning it out. And so it started with, like, we integrated the guides. I moved some of the Zelda Informer guides over to Zelda Dungeon, and then all the links eventually went on over. And then we started working on a layout, and the layout ended up taking a heck of a lot longer than I thought. The whole idea behind the layout is we're using the exact same Zelda Informer layout. That is the skeleton layout that we have now, except we just changed the color scheme and we changed the game navigation. Other than that, it's almost identical. And so the idea being, it's not going to be a big shock and awe to fans, because formatting is the same. It's the same writers, same everything.
It's just the URL that's different.
And in my opinion, I think for 99% of visitors of the websites, there's zero difference to them. They're like, oh, these guys changed color. Okay. The reality, that's I mean, it's the vocal minority that are like, the hell with Zelda Dungeon, or the hell with Zelda Universe, or the hell with Zelda Informer. That's a really small, important in some cases, group of people. But I think the bulk of the audience, they just want the information. They just want the news, or they just want the guide, whatever it is, and they can still get that.
Would you like to talk about the comment that Nate posted, with him leaving that comment, and then he linked in that comment to the original farewell post that he made on Zelda Informer that had a comment from you in it, where there were some differences in what actually happened, I guess, or like each side kind of has their own story. So would you like to talk about your story with that?
Yeah, I'll talk about it briefly. I don't want to. Nate and I, we worked together for about. We're still technically working together a little bit. He still helps out with the Facebook side of things. We have totally different mentalities of how to run a website, I'd say, and both have been successful for years. So I'm not necessarily saying either one is right, but Nate's always been a very vocal person who 100% transparency. Anything the viewers want to see, show it to them. Especially when there was like drama between the websites. I like to take pride that during the history, Zelda Dungeon never made a public post about Zelda Informer or about anybody. Maybe we talked amongst ourselves internally in the staff about, oh God, look at this person's doing, but we didn't make. I can count. There's probably about a half a dozen just completely trashing Zelda Dungeon posts. If you look back at the history of Zelda Informer, which ironically those posts are now in the archive of Zelda Dungeon, but I always made it a point to, I don't like that like somebody looking for looking at the Breath of the Wild interactive map that we have. They don't care about this drama. They just want the content. They just want what's important. And then they see something, it might actually throw them off. Like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Why? What? And so I try to avoid almost like the drama or the politics, at least on the front page. Behind the scenes, that's another story. But so Nate was very vocal about, and the story is kind of, like, if you talked to him 6 months ago, he was not as angry as he is now, and he's probably even more angry in a month. But it's some of the stuff he said is not 100% factually true, and it's very, I think, a lopsided interpretation of what went down. I think when I took over the website in January of 2016, there's a lot of things I could have done. I didn't have a great relationship with Nate for years and years. I could have gotten rid of him day one. I didn't. We met, and I made it a point to him. I gave him my word.
This was an in-person meeting?
Yeah, we had lunch, and I gave him my word that I will do everything I can to make this work. I know financially, 2016 was the best year he's ever had in his life in terms of Zelda websites. And I took a loss at Zelda Informer over the course of that year to try to make it work. It didn't work, and it didn't work for a lot of reasons. I don't want to get into it, but and then when it got to him, when I needed to make the decision, there were some trust issues. I feel that we never really saw eye to eye, and I feel that I'm not sure if he would acknowledge this, but I feel that he changed in January of 2016 when I bought the site, where he no longer, I don't think he had the same drive to make Zelda Informer what it could be because of the history, and I think his dislike for me. And while he was perhaps putting the same amount of time and effort into it at times, I don't think he had the drive and passion. And I think it showed, because there was a lot of decline in terms of viewership, in terms of just morale, in terms of uniqueness of the website. And like I said, I think 2016 was not a good year for the website. It was the first time ever Zelda Informer dropped in traffic. And this is a year which was all the hype train of what Breath of the Wild was, and Twilight Princess HD came out. On paper, that should be one of our best years ever.
I think that may also be because of all of the rise of all of the YouTubers making Zelda content.
But why didn't we not move in that direction? why did the Zelda websites have always evolved? They've always changed, and it's like we were stagnant in 2016. But you're right about that. There's definitely a hell of a lot more competition, if you want to call it competition. But there's a hell of a lot more opportunities to find content you're looking for. And but when he left the site, we talked. I think I made him a very generous offer. Very generous offer. I talked to a lot of the former staff members of Zelda Informer to get their input. A lot of people thought I was crazy for the things I offered them. And I think there's a lot of things that the big thing is I don't think he understands that when I purchased the website, I purchased everything that Zelda Informer was. I didn't just buy the website. I bought the Facebook page. I bought the YouTube channel. I bought the history. I bought all the articles. I bought the guides.
Just to be clear really quick, for the people that are watching this, you reached out on Discord about wanting to come on, and it wasn't, we didn't want you to come on, and you didn't want to come on to continue any drama. It's just to kind of have a concise, this is your side of the story, to kind of hopefully put the drama away. So there isn't any people hating on Zelda Dungeon now, or people hating on Nintendo Prime now. It's all just to have everyone...
I have to say, what Nate has done after our agreement, what he's done, and he's sort of taken his role with Nintendo Prime and ran with it, and he's doing a fantastic job. I truly, truly wish him the best. I want Nintendo Prime to be successful, and I'm willing to help him on occasion to help make his dream come true. The only thing I wish he just moved on. He needs to just move on. He can't be rehashing the same problems from year, and I don't like addressing it. I don't really like addressing it, and I haven't fully addressed it. I never will. I never will publicly address it. Not because I'm ashamed of anything, just because nobody cares. There's 20 people in the world that care. And I don't know why he needs to continuously, because it creates, people read his comment and then they start developing an opinion based on a one-sided argument, and I wish that didn't happen.
Yeah,
I wish he just moved on.
Well, from what I could take, the two biggest complaints that he had in that comment, which Daniel said Nate spoke to him before, and he's mentioned some stuff to me before whenever we did videos together. But in the comment that he left, I guess his two biggest complaints would be that he didn't feel after the purchase that he was seen as valuable as he thought he was from you. And then the second was, I know he made a statement in the comment about the one that he left on the Zelda Informer, and the YouTube comment about when you offered him, you can stay on for 6 months, and you said you gave him a very generous offer and everything. He said that it was more of a, you can, you don't have to stay on the website. We can just let you go and you can go and do your own thing, or you can take this 6 months or however long it was to continue working with Zelda Informer and receive whatever the pay was.
Yeah, that's basically, without getting into the nitty-gritty, I made him an offer that would allow him to transition to do what he wants to do without a sudden drop of the ball, zero revenue stream.
So instead of getting rid of him just completely, you tried working with him and allowed him to do his own thing while still being paid from Zelda Informer?
Correct. And even before that, before I even let him go, there was a period in late 2016, it should be mentioned, that for, I think it was about 2 months, where he didn't virtually was, I wouldn't say not totally hands off, he was still running the Facebook, but I said, go do Nintendo Prime. He just fully 100% focused on it while on the ZI payroll as editor-in-chief. And, we built that Nintendo Prime, that account, that Facebook account, and a lot of, there was a lot of good things that happened in Nintendo Prime in that era. And it was the foundation of what it has become. and I give him all the credit in the world for what's happened in 2017 for the site.
Yeah, I think he has over 30,000 YouTube subscribers now. So
yeah, and that's it's fantastic. But it's not as clear cut as he makes it seem.
All right,
I just leave it at that.
All right. Well,
I don't want to go into
ending this controversial discussion. I think that may bring us to the very end, unless there's anything else that you would like to discuss. The future. Would you like to share your thoughts on what you expect from the websites from, say, 2018, since it is the last day of the year? So what can we expect from you and the websites from 2018?
Well, I can say 2017 was the best year ever for the websites. I mean, in terms of traffic, it was through the roof. And I don't know if 2018 will surpass 2017 for obvious reasons. But I truly, this is the first time in a very long time I've really liked the direction the site is going. We have an awesome team in place, the writing team. I think our YouTube channel is finally on the right track.
You have the Hyrule Compendium series.
We've got some special surprises coming in the next few weeks on YouTube too. So
I always watch those. They're very casual conversations about very in-depth stuff only like a hardcore Zelda fan would be interested in. So it's always nice to, like, if I'm at the grocery store shopping for food, I'll like go to YouTube and put it on, put my headphones on, and just listen to like a natural Zelda conversation between die-hard fans while I shop. So I'm a big fan of it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I do wish it would get more views, though, because I see some with like a few hundred or like 1,000 views, and I'm like, there needs to be more. There needs to be more people.
I think it's trending upward. Like, it used to be like, sweet, we got 800 views. Now it's like, oh, we only have 1,000. So, I'm very optimistic about the future of the channel and the website overall.
All right, and Daniel and I have talked extensively about this, but with the Zelda series moving forward, do you expect any releases in 2018? It is the 20th anniversary of Ocarina of Time. I'm always a big fan of the idea of a 20th anniversary release of an official HD Ocarina of Time. Perhaps we get the handheld Zelda game that Nintendo has their other team working on. So what are your thoughts for 2018 in terms of Zelda games?
I think we might get that handheld. It might be a Switch game, though. I don't know if it could be a 3DS game. Who knows? But
I was going to say, sorry.
I actually think, and maybe this is not a popular opinion, I mentioned it in a recent compendium, though, I think we might get that mobile game, though. Like, they did Mario Run, and they've hinted at doing something with the Zelda series.
Yeah,
and I think that's very possible in 2018.
Nintendo recently made the announcement that they were partnering with other studios to make mobile phone games instead of just DNA, so it could come sooner than it would have before if they just stuck with DNA.
Yeah. I think we'll see something, though, because there's so many different branches that are working on Zelda right now. That what's Grezzo doing? What's Tantalus doing? What are they doing with mobile? So we'll see.
All right. Do you have any final words for the people watching?
No, thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity to come on, though. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is something. When I first started my YouTube channel, I actually reached out to you to see if you wanted to come on for an interview to talk about the history of Zelda Dungeon, but I think it may be better since we waited so long to do it, because there will be a lot more viewers instead of just a few thousand. We recently passed 50,000, so there'll be a lot more viewers to see it, and maybe if for some bizarre reason someone's never heard of Zelda Informer or Zelda Dungeon, now they have. So
yeah.
I can't honestly imagine a world where people haven't heard of those sites. There's been a few times where there's friends that I've had from high school that I haven't talked to in years. I'll catch up with them and they'll say that they're like playing through Majora's Mask and they're using the walkthrough from Zelda Dungeon, and I'm like, I know that site. Like I'm friends and buddies with some of the people there.
With Zelda Dungeon, I think there's a lot of people that have used Zelda Dungeon that have no idea what Zelda Dungeon is, if that makes sense. Because they get the, When was the last time you Googled something? Do you remember the website that you found it on?
Right.
You just found the information. And
whatever the first or second post is, you click on.
Right. That's exactly right.
All right. Well, thank you, Mossies, for coming on. If anyone wants to find more about you, whether it's on Discord, Twitter, wherever, is there any place someone could go to catch more from you?
Yeah, go to Discord. Go to Discord. If you go to Zelda Dungeon, you'll see a big link. Join our Discord. You can get in touch. You can get in touch directly with me, actually, or you can follow me. I'm Mossies the Great on Twitter.
All right, and thank you, Mossies, for joining. Thank you, Daniel, for sitting there silently.
You got a few sentences in.
Yeah.
I made a couple jokes.
The videos on this channel are funded by supporters on Patreon like you. If you're a fan of this channel and would like to join on videos, receive shoutouts, watch videos early, have your questions answered, or have your topic discussed on our podcast, please consider supporting on Patreon for these and many other rewards for just $1. Shoutouts for this video includes Link Use the Triforce, Rusty Caulfield, Lovable Christie, Give Time 15, Shadow to Us, Robbie Morgan, and Lunarium. I want to thank all of you for everything you have done to help support this channel.